We cannot sit and say how worried we are about AI taking creative jobs and technology taking over what we do if we're the ones ripping the heart out of it.
We've all, as we progress in our career, been in a room with your heart's going because you're like, am I about to say the most ridiculous thing I've ever said, or will it land really well? But most decisions that are made are instinct-based.
Welcome to Mad Influence, a podcast about the power of influence and what happens when people choose to use it for good. I'm Helen Saul, and after a decade in marketing, I've seen how influence can be used for good, bad, everything in between. In this series, I meet founders, campaigners and creatives who are choosing to use their platforms to make a meaningful impact, to understand how ideas spread, create connection and drive change. Today I'm joined by Tamira Hamden and Victoria Montgomery, co-founders of Women in Brand, a global community of over 3,000 women which has hosted events in cities including Sydney, Manchester and London to increase equity and opportunity for women in brand and marketing. Victoria's career began in a completely different place, training as an English teacher before finding her way into brand and communications, while Tamira began her career in magazine publishing, working internationally and building a foundation in storytelling, creativity and purpose. Between them, they've gone on to lead major brand projects, build teams and step into leadership, while being very open about the uncertainty, identity shifts and confidence gaps that can come with that journey. They started Women in Brand in response to what they were seeing around them, talented women doing influential work but not always feeling seen or encouraged to take up space. As Tamira puts it, inclusive spaces aren't a nice to have, they're the foundation for truly great creative work. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you both joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure having you. I thought a good place to start actually would be, Tammy, when you first messaged me, you told me a bit of a story about why you thought that we would be a good connection and also why you initially set up Women in Brand. And I wondered if you'd feel all right sharing that now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, share a deep passion for using influence for good. Really, Women in Brand was born out of frustration. Hopefully, as many good things are. It was a little bit selfish, I'll be honest. I mean, Victoria and I, we both sort of stumbled on brand by accident, which I'm told is pretty common, that you either get in by accident or you get in by nepotism. As one of our Women in Brand podcast guests said to us once. And the danger, particularly as a woman, I think, when you come at something by accident, is that the imposter syndrome is baked in. So any more than we ordinarily feel like we don't belong somewhere, when you happen upon something that you're really passionate about, there is always this kind of monkey on your shoulder that somebody's going to find you out. Anyway, so our paths crossed. We had a lot of the same frustrations, a lot of the same thoughts. I was definitely at a point in my career where I wanted to grow and where I wanted to learn, but the only people I was seeing available to teach me were, this is not to do any disservice to them, but a certain type of white, middle to older aged man who had been to design school and who had written some books or who had developed a course, which is incredible, like bully for them that they got that done. But I couldn't see anybody that looked like me. I couldn't see any women to learn from. So Victoria and I kind of got our heads together, shared a lot of frustration, shared a lot of wouldn't it be so great if, and from that niggling feeling that it could and should be better, and a little bit of delusion that we were going to be the ones to change that, Women in Brand was born.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with a healthy bit of delusion. It gets us a long way. I'm really interested in that idea of falling into something by accident. And I know that, you've both come from different places. And Victoria, you were doing something completely different, right? You were teaching English. So I wondered, is there anything that you take from that totally different experience that actually in hindsight has helped you in your career in branding and setting up Women in Brand today?
Oh my gosh. It's a good question because there is actually so much. And I don't think that it's talked about very much. Like, transferable skills is such a buzzword and everyone's put it on a CV and everyone's talked about it in an interview, but it's absolutely the case when you come from any kind of teaching background. I mean, teaching English as a second language is super unique and has its own kind of like set of challenges and values too. But when you are trying to communicate to someone and you're trying to educate people on something, it's all about soft skills. It's all about building rapport, building relationships and building trust. I don't think there's any situation more vulnerable than when you're in a room and you don't understand a language and you're trying to. And that is something that, no shade to Duolingo, but it can never replicate. It can never replicate 5, 6, 7 people being in a room, one person trying to explain something to you and you making mistakes. It's all about the failures that you make along the way and you learn from those. You're never going to get it right, obviously. So it was an incredible experience to observe and nurture and help people through that at all ages and all levels. But also from a teaching point of view, that is also a really vulnerable place to be in, because you are that one person in the room that is trying desperately to communicate something. That's a feeling that I've had in brand for years. Like in every situation I've been in, you are the one person that is trying to bring everyone else along on a journey. You're trying to story tell and help people see the value who probably don't really buy into brand and marketing and the purpose of that process. So for sure, I've seen so many synergies between those two experiences, and it really set me up because it was extremely daunting going into that room and desperately, like I say, trying to get my point across. So yeah, it was an incredible opportunity and something I'd recommend to everybody, wherever you're going into, whether it's a creative discipline or something else. That communication foundation you have just sets you up for every challenge you're going to come across, for sure.
Couldn't agree more. I really resonate with that. I've never taught English, but I have worked a lot abroad. I have been in environments where I'm having to use my second language or I'm working with people in their second language. And I think it's really interesting. And I know, Tami, you grew up in a really international environment in Dubai as well, right? So yeah, I wondered if you also understand a lot about those benefits of being surrounded by this.
It's kind of core to who I am. So I'm a child of mixed race. I'm half Palestinian, I'm half British. And from as early as I can remember, I've straddled the intersections of things. I've straddled the intersections of beliefs and religions, languages, cultural exchange, how you behave in social situations. I grew up all over, really. I've lived in Dubai, I've lived in Lebanon. And so the big culture shock that I felt was actually coming back here when I was 18 and starting at drama school in Liverpool and thinking, oh my God, like all the references are different. Everybody's talking about TV shows that I've never watched before. Everybody's talking about music that I've never heard before. My relationships to other people are totally different. I think everything that I understand about creativity and collaboration, and you said it at the top of the episode, it's about that exchange. It's about the tensions between our cultural differences and the differences in how we see the world. And it's about those synergies, as Victoria says, and where we find the meeting points on the Venn diagram of how we experience this life that we're living, how we come together societally, what we exchange between one another. It's everything that I love about the work that we do, is that collaboration and that exchange.
Definitely. And I'm really interested in that point around culture, because you've just described the feeling of, well, sometimes we call it reverse culture shock or just culture shock when you're moving between these places and trying to fit in again. And I know certainly from, working in a marketing and brand background, something that we often talk about trying to do is like tap into culture. We want to get involved and use it in a way that kind of makes our message go bigger and reach more people. Do you think that's something that we're doing well enough, or do you think sometimes people are sort of almost paying a bit of lip service to it to try and almost capitalize on something? I'm curious to know what your take is there.
I think there's a massive question and a really interesting discussion that's been going on for a little while about community, how brands are tapping into communities. And this is a whole podcast episode on its own, really. So we had an event like you mentioned in Manchester in May, And one of our speakers was Effia Mainu, an incredible woman. And she spoke about how when you open the door to brands and they come into your community, they have to take their shoes off before they come in, because there is a level of respect and earned respect that needs to be there all the way through a relationship. And obviously we're seeing a lot of brands really trying to get a foot in the door with culture and things that are going on and things that are really making people tick using these communities that already exist. But we're definitely seeing some brands hit the mark, and we're seeing a lot of brands really fumble with that. And it's concerning because, you know, as we are community founders, we're of course really, really protective of what that means and what those values are. But also it's a really great opportunity if brands do get it right. I know it's something that Tami is also really passionate about.
I think we're seeing the natural evolution of monoculture kind of breaking down during the pandemic because we weren't all together. We couldn't all have those shared touch points and references. So online culture becoming the kind of the dominant wave that we're all riding. Brands working out kind of in a Duolingo shock jock, I'm gonna meme everything, that maybe that's sometimes a counterproductive strategy and way to interact with culture. And then this next phase, as Victoria's said, is hopping onto the back of subcultures that exist within pre-established communities. And I think our position as brand strategists, as marketers, as creatives, is to make sure that we're doing a really good job as translators and bridges between those established subcultures and everything, the cultural code, the language that's spoken within them, everything that is pre-existing. I think that bridging bit is so important. It is the difference between something coming off as a pastiche of something, like a really gaudy sort of imitation of something authentic and true, and something being super, super aligned with a very, very hyper-specific group of people that are going to just completely understand what you're talking about when you say it.
There's a whole thing there with how brands are sometimes passing through communities like a hurricane. And what is really like a big ick for both of us is seeing brands capitalize on a moment or make that impact once, and then just leave because, you know, like they've hit their KPIs and like they're on to the next campaign. And that's not really trying to nurture relationships and build a community and, you know, like foster that loyalty and trust. And that's really a shame to see. So I really hope that we start seeing that a lot more in 2026, because too much of that happened last year, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of this as well must tie into your network. And is part of this the reason why you set up Women in Brand?
100%. I think, again, this is absolutely no shade to our fantastic allies and counterparts that are working in the industry and are creative and happen to be men. But I do think women have this natural affinity for empathy, for being able to hold many, many conflicting points of view and ideals at once, navigate that, and articulate why they're making the decisions that they're making. And I think who does that more than a brand team? It relies so heavily on emotional intelligence and really developed soft skills. I think we sort of knew when we founded the community, they're already out there. They're already out there doing amazing work. We just really want to spotlight that and showcase how incredible women in our industry really are at this.
Yeah. And how have you found that, the spotlighting these amazing women, setting it up? I'm sure there must have been moments that you're really proud of, moments that have been really difficult. I wondered if you could share some of those.
I think any founder goes on a journey that's non-linear. That's like a diplomatic way of saying there's lots of highs and lows, and it's really ironic when the thing that you're building is the community that you really want and need. But actually, Tami and I have been so lucky to have each other, because doing that would have been really lonely on our own, because, you know, a big part of our mission and what we're trying to do is help women who, as Tami says, already have it. You know, they've got the skills in abundance, they've got the experience, but aren't shouting about it. So we're also trying to convince people that that is worth doing, and you know, like the cards they've been dealt and the structure that they're working within doesn't have to be like that. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. The way that we're doing that is, you know, that is incredible to have had so many women come to us really, really generous with their time and their opinions and their energy, sharing their voices and their perspectives. And then that's kind of helping other people see like, oh, I could do that too. And yeah, it's very rewarding when we have people who, for example, contribute on our Substack and like share their story and are quite nervous about that. It's a great medium because it's written and you can be camera shy and you don't have to be completely confident in writing something, because we sort of help them to refine that. And then afterwards seeing the response and reaction and like literally in real time seeing that confidence being built and going like, I have got amazing results. Like, it is great. So that's one amazing positive experience that we've seen. Even leaders who you think they've smashed this, you know, like they've got decades behind them in their career, and then they'll come and speak at an event and you're actually a little bit nervous behind the scenes and you go, oh, we're all going through it actually. Like, no one really knows what they're doing.
And we do just get these incredible moments of, I'm thinking about an event that we held in London where this fantastic woman that sits on her board of directors and is killing it to all external perception walked in to our event, and she was like, I've felt my shoulders relax. Like, I stepped in here and I felt that warmth instantly. And we hear it over and over again when we bring women together. The words we hear are like warmth, relaxed, friendly, community, support. That's not for nothing. That's not by accident. Sure, we do things to make our spaces feel that way, but actually it's the women that show up, and it's the way that they show up for each other, and it's how jazzed they are to hear from one another and tell stories and listen to stories at the same time. So that is just singularly the most rewarding part, and it makes the hard bits, and I'll maybe speak to one of the hard bits. Building something from scratch is not easy. Fundraising is super, super hard. When we came into this, we knew that what we wanted to do was to build a resource that was online that allowed women to be paid for their knowledge and their work and educating others, and for other women to receive that education and to have access to a little black book. So we had that vision strong in our mind. And Victoria, how many times did we walk into rooms or walk into conversations that were like, I just don't think that's a need. Like, I don't really see why you would build that. I don't really see how that's going to make you money. And every single time you have one of those conversations, it's like, it's another slap in the face.
We've got really good at that conversation now. I could do that in my sleep.
Yeah. And, you know, for us, it's the micro level. I think last week there was a story about Grace Beverley and how many losses Tala has made when she's absolutely killing it on all fronts. So on that macro level as well, there's just constant reminders of stay small, stay in your lane, don't try and grow anything. So it does get fatiguing, but we have so many good things that keep us motivated and keep us going.
Yeah. And I often say, how many times has someone in finance changed how they talk and filtered their vocabulary for other people in the room? But people who work in brand marketing and communications are always having to change their language, because the second that you use something that people are sort of like, it turns them off and they don't quite understand it, they're out, you know, their eyes glaze over and you go, okay, I've lost the C-suite, or I've lost that decision maker. That's exactly what Tami and I have found with building a community, that ironically we're telling other women, back yourself, like you've got a really great idea, and you know, like one knockback or one kind of like lukewarm response to something just means that that's not the direction that we need to go in, and there's somebody else who will be there to partner with us and lift us up. So yeah, it's a roller coaster.
Yeah, for sure. I think that skill that you mention of the way that we translate things, we make things clearer, easy to understand, I think it's quite underrated in a way. It's almost something that we just have to do our jobs, and maybe people don't even realize that we're doing it, but it's so essential. And I wondered as well, when you're talking about knockbacks and also rejections of people not necessarily understanding, do you think that is something that all founders and people setting things up have to accept and get on board with that in order to get to the great thing, to build it, to do really well. There will be rejections along the way. And actually, this is a positive sign that there is some momentum there. It might be a no, but at least people are engaging.
100%. I don't think you'll come across a founder. Maybe this is how nepotism works. Maybe if you start from, you've got your funding, you're all set up, you have all of your connections, maybe you go without hearing that no. But I think if you're going from naught to thing, then you're taking a leap. You're starting something that other people can't visualize, can't grasp, is conceptual, that needs explaining. And how many times as marketers and as brand people do we hear, that's not going to work, no budget, audience isn't going to respond to that, don't like that word, that's the most frustrating one, don't like that shade of whatever color. So it's a similar thing being a founder. I think failure kind of is baked in.
Yeah, just when you were describing what you were describing then, you're giving me all kinds of flashbacks. And I'm wondering if you feel that marketing brands, disciplines, for whatever reason, seem to be disciplines that everybody isn't allowed an opinion on and everybody gets input.
Absolutely. And I put to you again a sort of gender discourse on leadership. This is a big part of what we talk about at Women in Brand. There's stats behind it. There's evidence of the drop-off of women that get into marketing and brand leadership in all disciplines, in all sectors, all industries. And a big part of that has to be exactly your point, that you need people who are bullish and confident to lead the way, and no matter what no's come from the other parts of a business, are able to put things across. And, I think a lot of women that we speak to, some people have had fantastic experiences if they're like the only woman on a board or the only woman at that leadership level. But a lot of other women are like, oh yeah, like it is really lonely because it's a very different environment. Like I'm having to adapt how I'm being in a room. Like I can't go into a room of a C-suite and like have small talk and, like do those things that Tami said happen at our events, like just having fun and being nice to each other, because you're still going to get the work done. But that doesn't happen at that level. So we are really passionate about helping to address that inequality and why that barrier is in place for women being picked to get into leadership, but also feeling like they can be in those leadership positions, because women bring so many unique qualities, but you do see that massive drop off. It's got to be related to that personality type and what you feel you can be afforded to do.
Yeah, of course. And I wondered as well, is it even more the case depending on the type of place that you work?
I think organizational culture is always going to have a bearing on your experience, and particularly as a woman, your organization's commitment to equity, to an inclusive way of working, to even doing things like checking for balance in the room, checking that you are mindful of introverts and extroverts and their different responding styles, spontaneous versus having longer to consider and come away and think through things. What I will say is, and it's the benefit of running this network, is my field of vision was only limited to what I had experienced. And then through talking to all of the women that we interact with, it's super sad to say it, but I've heard maybe more stories from agency side and from that faster paced younger organizations of being the only woman in a room and being the most junior, of harmful cultures and a lack of safety and a lack of psychological safety as well when showing up to work as a woman. And through not being as established an organization, not having very, very well staffed HR teams with policies and processes and legal implications if something goes wrong, a lot more onus on you to decide where that line is for you of, no, this is too much and I need to speak up and I am actually uncomfortable and I don't feel able to assert myself as a woman in this space.
Yeah. And I think that links in a way to something that I've heard Victoria, you talk about on your own podcast, and it was about how you felt when you were progressing as someone relatively young for your age, and something that I really resonated with as well, because certainly for a long time when I was first progressing in my career, I wouldn't tell people how old I was. I didn't want people to know because of comments that people had made. And also I felt like I wanted to give this authority that maybe some people I felt would judge me for. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about that, and if you've got any advice for anyone who has, progressed maybe ahead of what is the standard thing. And I know, by the way, it exists at both spectrums. I know also there can be a lot of ageism when you get older as well in advertising, but just wondered if you could share a bit about that experience.
Absolutely. Reverse ageism exists and isn't talked about as much as ageism. That experience that I had wasn't the end of the world, and it didn't stop me having a career, but it was something that I was really conscious of. And skipping probably ahead to my advice is I was really fortunate to find someone like Tami, find other people who counterbalance like that negative experience you're happening and lift you up and champion you no matter what, and just tell you over and over and over, no, your voice is important, and also your opinions are really good. So often we've all been in a room where we go, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't have something to say here. Or like your heart's going because you're like, am I about to say the most ridiculous thing I've ever said? Or will it land really well? Because anything to do with marketing and brand is like that. Like, for sure, there are the courses you can go and do, and there's the schools that you can go to. But most decisions that are made are instinct based. Sometimes there's data involved and it's evidence based, but mostly it's kind of taking a jump and hoping that thing lands. And that's why having a diversity of perspective in a room is really important, because you make sure that you bring in all the ideas into that melting pot, and then you pull out what's right for your brand, what's right for the moment, and what's right for the strategy. It's a real shame that those younger voices aren't sort of seen as, particularly in creative situations, seen as really valid. The amount of time that, like companies are marketing to the Gen Z demographic, but Gen Z aren't represented at the table of decision making about Gen Z. So I guess my advice would be, like I say, like find those people around you, whether that's like officially through like a mentoring scheme or more unofficially just friends that you can find that will really support you and back you. And also, I guess something that I found really helpful for me when I was going into those rooms and I was like, I don't know if like I have the confidence to say this thing or even if it's the right thing, was really trying to rationalize every kind of opinion I had and every decision I had and write it down and make that more methodical. And that's annoying because you shouldn't have to do that. But it really did help me to go like feel more comfortable that no matter what response is thrown back at me, I have the rationale and the case behind it. But it's a real problem and stops people progressing when they're really good. And I agree with you, Helen, about the age thing and like going into a situation and like stopping like talking and like showing your full identity. I've been at loads of events where I'm representing and they're leadership and executive level events, and people have like physically turned away from me because they're kind of like, oh, I don't think that we're going to have something in common. And like it was their loss that they didn't get to be part of that conversation. So whatever you can do to try and flip that around, like if someone doesn't remember your name, you go, well, that's your problem. Like you're much more senior and much more experienced in your career. How have you not learned how to remember people's names now? All of those sorts of things that like help flip the discourse, gradually help. But for sure, it's really tiring as an experience.
Yeah, I think something that I have enjoyed as I've progressed in my career is those experiences that I've had in the past, learning from them and being able to build into my leadership the way that I would like to be led. And I wondered from a few things that you described there, Victoria, of that feeling that we've all felt where, we're not 100% sure if we might be right in what we're saying. Tami, you mentioned earlier about how you can have people that are both extroverted and introverted and thinking about those different, working styles. And I wondered, as leaders, and obviously you've both now founded your own community as well, what are the things that enables us and the power that we really have to be able to be doing things that can help lift others up around us?
That's such a good question, Helen. Thank you for asking it. I think when we were just about to host our very first event, Victoria and I were kind of talking through, like, what are the things that we really care about? What are our sort of non-negotiables about how we want people to feel when they interact with women in brand? And Victoria landed on like professional, but not corporate. And that, I guess, was sort of our guiding light of like, you can take yourself seriously and you can be for your career and you can be ambitious and you can deeply care about wanting to learn and wanting to progress. But actually, that corporate stigma of you have to do that at the expense of your own comfort and at the expense of your own individuality and identity, and often, sadly, at the expense of someone else, was not going to fly at Women in Brand. So those spaces are about you showing up with as much or as little of your out of office personality as you want to, you showing up for your community as much as you would hope that they show up for you, and that reciprocity, and you taking yourself seriously and being at least vulnerable enough to speak up about what you care about, what you don't know, what you would like to know, and what you want, really importantly. So that really shaped, I think, the way that the community spaces feel and what we're trying to build there. And then my leadership style with my team, going all the way back to kind of my upbringing and where I come from, it's built on that foundation of I'm never going to be able to do my best work if I don't let you see who I am. And I don't let you in on what I'm worried about and what I'm preoccupied with and what I'm super into right now. And hopefully creating an environment where it's safe for all of my team to do the same. For me, that's bare minimum that we can do as leaders. And listen more than you talk, hopefully, is the other thing that I found really useful.
I think that is very good advice. And I was wondering if either of you have any specific experiences that you can think about, moments in your own career, maybe before you were leading, that has informed how you lead today.
I'll go first with one that's more negative, but there are learnings from it. And it's one that Tami knows about too, and really kind of helped to fuel part of the reason why I wanted to co-found Women in Brand. And it's having like female managers earlier in your career who, for one reason or another, whether it's their personality or if it's the lived experience they had, who lift the ladder up behind them and don't not even like actively support sort of younger members of their team, but actively kind of try and limit them and dampen down where they might be going and sort of what the opportunities are for them. Without sort of going into the details of that, like it was a really kind of sort of turning point for me where I was like, that's really not fair and not very nice. It's not very nice to be like trying to like actively stop younger women. Like, you've been through this, you should be doing. And no, it's not on the shoulders of the women who've been through it. Like, they're tired, you know, like they've gotten to leadership positions in spite of the kind of environment they built their career in. But also, like, I never want to be a leader like that who, you know, is putting myself first and not like trying to help people. It's a shame that I see that time and time again happening. And we talk a lot about when you have sort of male managers who kind of don't support you. But for sure, I had those experiences with women. I'm like, oh, it's a shame to not be like lifting each other up, both publicly and privately, because, you know, you might have that in a one-to-one situation, but it still falls short when you get into the room and they're like, I'd rather have my voice heard over yours. Like, that's also not okay. So yeah, that's something that I really am passionate about championing as a leader.
I think that's a really important one. And also, I think if you take all credit for yourself and you sort of don't uplift and celebrate your team, I think it just kind of shows a real insecurity there. And I think instead, if you celebrate and promote your team, that only reflects well on you.
Yeah.
Because you are the one supporting and leading them.
Like, that does apply across any type of job you're doing. You're all working towards the same thing. We are at work for so much of our life. I can't imagine being in those environments and also creating those environments and then, you know, going home at night and going like, I did a good job there. Like, that was great. I didn't impact anyone negatively.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Definitely. And we're talking about it now at like an individual scale in terms of whether you choose to celebrate the immediate people around you or if you put barriers in place to stop them. And I think this is interesting in terms of its relationship with a much bigger scale, something that I have noticed, which is a lot of discourse online where whenever anyone publishes work, maybe it's like a new brand campaign or whatever it is, people have a lot of opinions about it. And usually it's negative opinions. And sometimes you'll even get situations where it'll make it to the wider press as well. And I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on that, because I do recognise that it is important to be able to assess work around us and understand what's working well and what's not. But sometimes it feels like potentially it might be a bit extreme.
I'm so happy you asked this, Helen. I feel so passionately about it. And I think we can be candid and say that it's one platform primarily that's driving that kind of discourse. And let's be clear, we met on that platform. LinkedIn can do amazing, wonderful things for connecting you, for surfacing opportunities that you weren't previously aware of. But I do think the hot takery and the kind of let's all just pile in on the latest visible creative, it's to our own detriment. We cannot sit and say how worried we are about AI taking creative jobs and technology taking over what we do if we're the ones ripping the heart out of it. Like, somebody sat behind that rebrand, that line that you're slagging off, that campaign that you think was flat and didn't land and didn't have the research behind it. I really think there is a difference between consideration, critique, and case studying and what is happening in our industry right now, where it's just a race to the bottom and sometimes a really badly hidden popularity contest. Like, it feels like there are maybe 2 creative studios that get praise heaped on them for everything that they do. And then if you're not one of those like mythical 2 or 3 studios primarily based in London, your work is just a free for all for anybody to weigh in on and chime in with. I think it's really disappointing and really toxic.
Yeah.
And I think going back to if you are more a sort of junior or you're developing your opinions, it's also damaging for those people, because I have definitely been in scenarios where I've really liked something that a brand's come out with, and then you see there's this massive pile-on and everyone's slating it, and it makes you kind of nervous about your own opinion and also doubt yourself. Whereas there is a productive and an academic way that you can have that conversation, something we found through Women in Brand, and part of why it's important for us to have that as partly a closed community is that it can be really useful to share work and to talk about those things and create a safe space where you can learn from it. But unfortunately, that just doesn't exist right now and is quite a sort of dangerous and nasty place to be sometimes. I often think, like, are these people either bots or do they not have teams and peers and clients who like are seeing these comments, and are you seeing that and going, yes, I'm really happy to be working with this person? I'm really confused by it, and probably think that there's going to be a tipping point in the near future where either that just like dies a death, or there needs to just be a radical change of how people are addressing particularly brand and marketing work.
Yeah, definitely. We're coming kind of close to the end of this now, so I just wanted to check, is there anything that you would have liked me to ask you today that you feel we've not gone into yet?
Ooh, maybe we could chat a little bit about what's next for Women in Brand.
Please, I would love to hear about that.
And where we're going, because we're gassed about it.
That's a great place to be.
So what year are we in? Almost year 3 now of Women in Brand, getting to that big vision that we talked about when we were chatting to investors and they were bamboozled about our model and about how it worked. So we are shortly about to open up membership, as Victoria says, to the kind of closed community part of Women in Brand. that will be part social network and part messaging and networking and sharing ideas in a safe space and in a way that isn't pile-on with one another, and part education offering as we're already doing with our regular events. So we're so excited about that, and we're really, really hoping that what we can build and what we get to is a strong enough voice and presence in our industry where we do start affecting behavioural change, and we do start being able to partner with teams and with decision makers to be able to make branding and creative a safer and more productive and more celebratory and fun space for women. So yeah, it's a big year for us, and we're very, very excited about that.
Very exciting. Just hearing you describe it reminded me something I wanted to ask you that I haven't asked you yet, which is just, you've obviously got so much in the picture for women in brand. You both work as well in other jobs. How do you manage all of this together?
Can you see the eye bags?
It's a really interesting part of our journey. I'm sure will be a whole chapter in the book that we eventually write together about when you're building something sustainably, maybe because of that, because you actually have a full-time job and like this is the thing that you do on your evenings and your weekends and your lunch hour, and like you're permanently tired. Not to be woes at us, but yeah, it is really challenging, but we're so passionate about it, so we love what we do and we're happy to be doing it. But it's a really interesting thing to observe that when you're building that sustainably and like with a long-term picture in mind, and also with the people in the community. Like, it's a big thing for us that naturally we don't want to be the only people sort of like building the house and then, you know, like then people come into it. We want to be building it all together and it to be serving people. We want to make sure that this thing is built with those people in mind and lasts for a really, really, really long time, because we found a gap. It is weird to find a gap. It's weird to be like, oh, you have the delusion that you can be the people to fill it, because often you identify something and go like, oh, well, that's a shame. Like, I wish I had that, but I don't. But we were the ones that were like, no, we want to do it. Like, that's something that we really want for ourselves too. So yeah, it's a long-term project, and that's shown over the 3 years or so that and longer that we've been talking about it. It took us a long time of like discussing it to get to exactly where we want, because let me tell you, Helen, you can't develop an identity for something and a proposition that's not perfect when you're talking to people in brand. Like, they are the experts at this. They will see through anything. So we had to do it really right, and that's gorgeous to see now come into fruition. And like Tami says, will be a big year, and hopefully people respond well to that and get behind it. But we're pretty certain they will, because we built it together.
Yeah, that's so special to hear that. I think I can really just hear like the passion, and I hope that you're both really proud of where you've got it to, because I think it's a really impressive achievement.
We are very proud.
And it helps in the day job for sure, like, because brand does have ups and downs and boring parts and exciting parts, and like any job, it really helps, you know, that you can like log off at the end of the day and go like, oh, okay, I get to go and do this like thing that's really creative and I love. So it really does help having the, you know, whatever you call it, like side hustle, side passion project. But yeah, we are really lucky. It helps to remind ourselves of that when it is really crazy and stressful. And yeah, we're not seeing our friends and family that much.
Yeah. I have one final question for you both, and it's something that I like to ask everybody, which is around influence. And if there is one either moment or person that you can think of that has influenced you in where you are today, and take some time to think about it if you need.
It's such a good question.
It's a great question. I can think there's so many, and so many women as well, but I'll name one in particular. When I was very early in my brand career, and when I found myself tasked with a rebrand and in a room at an agency where there were client directors and account directors and directors of this and associate that, and there was me, little brand manager, very, very delighted and pleased to be there, but like eyes the size of saucepans watching all of this happening around me. There was a woman that was our strategy director on the rebrand, and she's become a friend. Her name's Claire Berthet. And what happens in agencies usually, and this is nobody's fault, but all of the conversation tends to be directed towards the budget holder / decision maker / usually most senior person in the room. And Claire would always look me dead in the eye and would talk directly to me. She wouldn't dumb down language. She wouldn't try and oversimplify. She would always ask me my opinion. She would directly say, Tami, what do you think about that? Tami, does that resonate? Tami, when you think about your customer. And it was almost like a jump scare, but in a really good way. It was so startling to me that she made me visible. And I've tried my best to do that wherever I can now. And I hope I will be afforded the opportunity to keep doing that for people, because it makes such a big difference. And it is such an incredible way to use your influence in a space.
I think that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that, Tami.
I similarly, there are so many moments, but something that's always influenced me a lot is that point about mentoring, coaching, and like having those people around you who uplift you. There was an experience that I had where I was really lucky to be mentored by the CMO of Penguin Random House, Becca Sinclair. And it was great to talk to her and hear about her. And she is really, really cool and worth a follow on LinkedIn. She's really interesting and great at what she does. But actually, it was the experience of finding her. Basically, Tami has always said to me about mentoring and coaching and always said that, God, it's such an amazing thing to do. So I was on the lookout for somebody, and I thought, this was before we even started Women in Brand. I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to take a punt that little, at the time, nice platform called LinkedIn exists. And I reached out to Becca on LinkedIn and just said, like, this is where I'm at. Like, I don't really know necessarily what I want to get out of a conversation, but I just identify like what you're doing is really, really cool. And it would be a privilege for me to speak to you. And she came back to me and was like, I'm really, really busy, but the fact that you've reached out and you've taken that jump and put yourself out there has really impressed me. So it'll be great to talk. And that's really simple. But genuinely, every time that I talk to people earlier in their career, or even, students, I do quite a lot of like careers events and things like that at schools. Every time that I say, like, you can just ask people, they go, what do you mean? Like, that's baffling to me. So it sounds like a really simple thing to do and to bear in mind. But again, I think a lot of women don't really think to do that and don't really have the confidence. So I love having conversations with all different types of people, no matter whether they're like related to what you do and your discipline, or they could be in a completely different like world. You're probably always going to get something out of those conversations. So that is influence. Like every single interaction you're having, every chat you're having, they might not even realize that it's really having an impact on you, but it does. And again, through the community, through Women in Brand, we've been fortunate to have the time of many, many incredible women who are doing great things and who would like to be involved with what we're doing too. And every one of those conversations, including this one, Tami and I come away and go, this is why we love what we do. Like, this is it. So it's inspiring and energizing, and like, you never know what you're going to get out of it. So that's always my advice, to look for those opportunities.
That's great advice. And I think it's a great reminder, the story about just messaging someone, because at the end of the day, all these people on LinkedIn, they are real people. Maybe they were once in a similar position to you. And yeah, they're probably getting loads of messages about general spam, but actually a personalized individual request for a conversation is actually a lot rarer. And, certainly I couldn't have made my podcast without doing that. Probably 90% of the people I have on are cold messages where I just go in cold. I don't know them, just have to take a punt, and it works. Like, you do manage to make connections in that way. So I think that's a really good one to remind people of. Thank you so much for this conversation. I have loved having you both on. It's been a delight. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us, Helen. It's been a joy. I really loved that.
Yeah, it's fantastic to talk to you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. If people want to find you or your network, where would you like to send them?
We are Women in Brand on almost every platform, womeninbrand.substack.com, Women in Brand on Instagram and LinkedIn. So please do come and join the pack, give us a follow. And if you want to sign up to our membership and to any of our events, it's womeninbrand.online.
Amazing. Thank you for listening to Mad Influence. This is the part of the episode where podcasters tend to ask you to subscribe and most people don't bother, but but I would really appreciate it if you could do, because it sends a signal to the platforms to say that the content is good, more people get to see it, and we get to grow the podcast and invite more guests on in the future. So if you could press follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to or watching this podcast, I would really appreciate it.